While waiting in the ICU hallway at 4:18 a.m. with nothing but vending machine coffee and the antiseptic smell of decisions no one wants to make, a being made of structured light sat down beside me and told me the truth about death. Not the comforting version hospitals put in pamphlets, not the theological version that requires faith when you're out of everything including faith, but the operational manual. If you've ever sat in one of those hallways where every opening door is both hope and the end of hope, where the fluorescent lights hum like they're trying to remember how to be merciful, where time stops being minutes and starts being the distance between the last update and the next one, you know, the specific kind of braking I was doing when he appeared. My father was behind the double doors with the keycard access, a breathing tube doing the work his lungs had forgotten how to do, machines tracking numbers that were trending in the direction no son wants to watch numbers trend. The doctor had used the phrase multiple organ failure, with the careful tone doctors use when they're translating mortality into something families can hold without dropping. I'd been told to wait, to sit, to let them work, which is another way of saying stand at the threshold and do nothing while the people you love decide whether to stay or go without asking your opinion. That's when the being arrived. No door opening, no footsteps, just a shift in the air's density and a presence sitting on the bench that had been empty 1 second before. He looked like a man if men were composed entirely of geometry that cared, light organized into a structure that knew your name before you did. He said his name was Raphael. He said he was a healing threshold guide, which meant he helped consciousness navigate the space between body and what comes after. And then he said something that ripped through my chest like good news that arrives too late and too early at the same time. Your father is choosing right now. I'm here to help you understand what he's choosing between so you can say the right goodbye. The next 22 minutes rewrote everything I thought I knew about dying, about pain, about whether love is strong enough to let go, and about what actually happens in the minutes when machines flatline and families break. What I learned wasn't soft, it wasn't poetic. It was operational, practical, specific, the kind of truth that comes with instructions you can actually use when the world is ending in a room you're not allowed to enter. If you've sat in that hallway, if you're sitting in one now, if you know you'll sit in one someday, stay. This isn't a story, it's a manual. And it starts with the hardest question anyone ever asked me in the kindest voice I've ever heard. ICU, 3rd floor, County General Hospital, the hallway that smells like hope, went through a sterilization cycle and came out smaller. My name is Marcus Hale, 41 years old. I manage supply chain logistics for a manufacturing company, which means I'm very good at predicting timelines, optimizing flows, and planning for contingencies. None of that matters when your father's kidneys stop processing the medications, keeping his heart in rhythm, and the rhythm starts writing a sentence no one wants to finish. He'd been here 6 days. Sepsis from a routine surgery that stopped being routine when the infection found highways through his bloodstream faster than the antibiotics could build roadblocks. Day 1, treatable. Day 3, concerning. Day 6, the doctor with the silver hair and the kind eyes used the phrase comfort measures, which is medical shorthand for we've run out of miracles and now we're negotiating with morphine. I'd been in this hallway for 14 hours, rotating between the bench, the vending machines, and the bathroom where I'd cried twice with the faucet running, so the sound had somewhere to hide. My sister was on a flight from Denver. My mother was in the room holding his hand, whispering things I couldn't hear through the glass partition that separated ICU beds from hallways full of people waiting for permission to fall apart. At 4:18 a.m., the hallway was mine. A janitor had mopped through 20 minutes ago, leaving the floor slick enough to reflect the fluorescent panels overhead, turning the linoleum into a low-res mirror that showed me a version of myself I didn't recognize. Unshaven, shirt wrinkled from sleeping in a chair designed by someone who'd never experienced grief, eyes doing that thing where they're open but not processing input anymore. I had a cold cup of coffee in my hands, 3rd refill, tasting like the inside of the machine had opinions about my life choices. That's when the air changed. Not temperature, pressure. The way your ears pop on an airplane, but without the airplane, just a sense that the room had briefly expanded to fit something it wasn't designed to hold. I looked up from the coffee cup. A man sat on the bench beside me, 2 feet of space between us. the respectful, distant strangers keep in hospitals. Except he wasn't a stranger, and he wasn't exactly a man. He was human-shaped, 6 feet, broad-shouldered, hands resting on his knees, but composed entirely of light that had learned structure. Not glowing, not blinding, organized. As if photons had taken a class on anatomy and decided to build a guest lecturer. His face was calm, symmetrical in a way that didn't look manufactured, just inevitable. And his eyes were the color of deep water in good light, which shouldn't be a color. Eyes can be, but there it was. "Marcus," he said, and the voice wasn't sound so much as certainty delivered straight into the part of my brain that keeps my name on file. "I'm Raphael. I work thresholds where the body is deciding whether to continue." I didn't jump. I didn't scream. I didn't even question whether I'd fallen asleep in the chair, and this was a dream my exhausted brain was improvising out of desperation and vending machine stimulants. I just said, "Is he dying?" Because when a light being sits next to you in the ICU at 4 a.m., you skip the small talk. "He's choosing," Raphael said, and the correction was gentle but firm. Dying is what happens when the body stops. Choosing is what the consciousness does before that. He's in the space between what you'd call the threshold, and I'm here because you need to understand what he's seeing so you can help him cross without guilt. "I don't want to help him cross," I said, gripping the coffee cup hard enough to dent the styrofoam. "I want him to stay." "I know," Raphael said, and there was no judgment in it, no lecture, just acknowledgement that wanting someone to stay is the most human sentence a person can speak. But staying isn't always the kindest option, and he's asking for your permission to go. "He didn't ask me anything," I said, voice cracking because anger is easier than grief when you're still pretending you're in control. "The doctor asked if we wanted to intubate again after the next DSAT. That's not the same." "He's asking without words," Raphael said. "Every time you walk to the glass and look at him, he feels your presence. Every time you hesitate to say goodbye, he feels that too. He's holding on because he thinks you need him to. I'm here to show you what holding on costs him and what letting go gives him, so you can choose with information instead of fear." I set the coffee down on the bench between us, hands shaking now, the kind of shaking that comes from adrenaline with nowhere useful to go. "Show me," I said, "but don't lie to make it easier." "I don't lie," Raphael said. "I translate." He stood, without standing, more like his presence repositioned itself, and gestured toward the double doors that led to the ICU pods. "Come," he said. "You won't need the keycard." I stood, because when a celestial being gives you directions in a hospital, you follow. We walked toward the doors that should have required a badge scan. They opened anyway, not automatically like they do for staff, but softly, as if the lock had decided to take a break. Inside, the ICU was exactly as I'd left it an hour ago. 12 beds in a semicircle, each one a small theater of medical intervention, monitors beeping in a rhythm that sounded less like life and more like life being supervised. My father's bed was third from the left, curtain half drawn. My mother asleep in the recliner with her coat pulled over her like a blanket, because someone had turned the thermostat down to the temperature where bacteria negotiate surrender. My father lay still, intubation tube taped to his mouth, wrists restrained loosely so he wouldn't pull at the lines in his confusion, chest rising and falling in the mechanical rhythm of a ventilator, doing all the deciding. His eyes were closed, but Raphael pointed without pointing, just directing attention, at a space above the bed. "He's here too," Raphael said, and there he was. My father, but not my father. The same face, the same square jaw, and the scar over his left eyebrow from a lawnmower blade in 1987, but younger, mid-50s instead of 72, standing upright instead of prone, looking down at his own body with an expression I'd never seen him wear, curiosity without fear. "He's been here since day 4, Raphael said. "Consciousness starts to decouple when the body's load becomes unsustainable. He's not gone. He's attending from a wider seat." "Can he hear me?" I asked, staring at the version of my father that was standing, the one that looked like he'd just woken from a good nap instead of a 6-day fight with sepsis. "Always," Raphael said. "But he hears you more clearly when you speak without needing him to answer. The body is too tired to answer. The consciousness isn't. I wanted to speak, but my throat had other plans involving closing completely and making me breathe through my nose like a kid trying not to cry in front of company. Raphael waited with the patience of something that doesn't measure time in shifts. "Here's what you need to understand," Raphael said, turning his attention away from my father's dual presence and back to me. "When the body reaches threshold, the consciousness is given a choice, not by me, not by God in a booming voice, by the body itself, which is wiser than your neurologist give it credit for. The body asks, 'Do you want me to keep trying or do you want to go ahead?' And he's saying, 'Go ahead?' I asked, hating the question. "He's saying, 'I'll stay if they need me to,'" Raphael corrected, "which is different. He's negotiating with love, not capacity. The body is out of capacity. The infections are too far distributed. The antibiotics are fighting a war in a city that's already been evacuated. But the consciousness, your father, the part that knows your name and remembers teaching you to ride a bike by holding the seat until you told him to let go. That part is still here because he doesn't want to hurt you by leaving." "Then I'll tell him to stay," I said. "If that's what keeps him here, I'll tell him." "You could," Raphael agreed, "and he would try. For another day, maybe two. The ventilator would keep pushing air. The medications would keep his blood pressure numeric. But Marcus, he wouldn't be living. He'd be enduring. And enduring isn't the same as staying." "What's the difference?" I asked, because logistics is about definitions, and I needed the terms spelled out. "Staying is when the consciousness and the body are both participating," Raphael said. "Enduring is when the consciousness is standing beside the bed, watching the body work without it. He's already enduring. You're asking him to endure longer. Is that what love does?" I didn't answer because the answer was no, and saying no out loud felt like signing something I couldn't unsign. "Let me show you what he's choosing between," Raphael said, and the ICU dissolved without moving. We were still in the room, but the room had become a layered thing, like looking through glass that shows you two reflections depending on the angle. On one side, my father in the bed, machines sustaining the outline of life, numbers on monitors that would eventually trend toward flatline no matter how many times they recalibrated the drips. On the other side, my father standing in a space that looked like the waiting room of somewhere I didn't have a name for. Not heaven, not clouds. A corridor with soft light and doors that opened onto places I couldn't see clearly but could feel. One door led to something that smelled like his workshop, sawdust and mineral spirits, and the cologne he wore to church. Another door led to a sound like my mother's laugh from 40 years ago when her laugh didn't have arthritis in it. A third door led to a group of men I didn't recognize, but my father clearly did. Tar walked toward them with his hand out for a shake, and they pulled him into the kind of hug men give each other when they've been through something no one else would understand. "What is that?" I asked, pointing at the men. "His brother," Raphael said. "Died in Vietnam, 1968. His father. Died of a heart attack, 1991. His best friend from high school. Died of cancer, 2003. They're not ghosts. They're consciousness that's already crossed. And they're here to meet him because transition is easier when you're not walking into a room alone." "And if he stays?" I asked. "If I tell him to fight?" Raphael gestured to the bed. "The body keeps running on machinery. The consciousness keeps standing beside it, waiting, unable to move forward or back. He'll fracture. Not immediately. But over days, the split between where he is and where the body is will widen, until he's so thin he can't remember why he stayed. I've seen it. It's not kind." I watched both versions of my father, the one intubated and the one standing in the corridor with men who loved him when love was uncomplicated by decades. "How do I let him go?" I asked, and the asking felt like the floor had opened, but I hadn't fallen yet, just recognized that falling was the next step. 3 sentences, Raphael said. You go to the glass. You speak them out loud. You trust that love is strong enough to do the hardest thing it's ever been asked to do. First sentence, Raphael said, and his voice had the cadence of someone who'd given these instructions 1,000 times and knew they only worked if you followed them exactly. "Thank you for staying as long as you did." "Why that one?" I asked. "Because it releases him from the job of being needed," Raphael said. "He stayed because he thought you'd break if he left. Tell him the staying was enough. Tell him you received it. Gratitude is the cleanest way to close a contract. Second sentence. I'll take care of her. Raphael nodded toward my mother, still asleep in the chair. Her hand resting on the bed rail like even in sleep she was tethering him to this side. He's worried about her, Raphael said. Not in an articulate way, the body's too tired for articulate, but the consciousness loops back to her every time it tries to step toward the corridor. Tell him you'll take care of her, specifically, not we'll be fine. Say, I will take care of her. Specificity is permission. Third sentence, you can go. I felt my chest crack in the way ribs crack when you finally let yourself breathe after holding your breath too long. Not, it's okay to go, Raphael clarified. Not, if you need to go. Say you can go. Can is different than okay. Okay is passive, can is active. You're giving him the ability, not just the permission. Grammar matters at thresholds. And then? I asked. Then you go back to the hallway, Raphael said. You sit. You wait. And when the nurse comes to get you, you don't fight the news. You receive it the way you received him staying. With gratitude for what was, not rage at what isn't. I nodded because my voice was gone, packed up and shipped somewhere my logistics brain couldn't track. Raphael stood again, the repositioning of presence, and the layered room collapsed back into the ordinary ICU with ordinary machines and ordinary tragedy playing out in ordinary time. One more thing, Raphael said, and he reached out, without reaching, just directing warmth, and touched the space on my chest where my heart was doing its best impression of staying intact. He's proud of you. Not for anything you've done, for agreeing to do this. Letting go is harder than holding on, and he knows it. He'll wait on the other side to tell you himself, but I'm telling you now because you'll need to hear it at 4:32 a.m. when the monitor alarms. I walked to the glass partition. My mother was still asleep. My father's body was still doing the mechanical ballet of being sustained. The version of him standing in the corridor was watching me with an expression I finally recognized: relief. I put my hand on the glass. "Dad," I said, and my voice was a whisper, but the ICU is quiet enough at 4 a.m. that whispers carry. "Thank you for staying as long as you did." I watched his chest rise and fall with the ventilator's rhythm, but I wasn't talking to the chest. I was talking to the man standing in the corridor who heard me without ears. "I'll take care of her, I promise. Every day. I'll check the gutters and I'll fix the porch light and I'll call her on Thursdays because that's your day, and I'll make it mine." The standing version of my father nodded, and I swear I saw his mouth move in the shape of "thank you." "You can go," I said, and the sentence came out clean, no waver, no sob, just the grammar of love that's strong enough to stop holding. "You can go, Dad. I've got it from here." I don't know if the machines heard me, but at 4:32 a.m., exactly when Raphael said, the monitor alarm went from the steady beep of supervision to the single tone of conclusion. My mother woke. A nurse came in, checked the rhythm, looked at the clock, and turned to us with the face nurses make when they've done this too many times to pretend it's shocking. "I'm so sorry," she said. My mother cried in the big, ugly way that doesn't care about decorum. I held her and I didn't cry yet, because I was too busy watching the corridor through the glass that wasn't glass anymore, just a window, and seeing my father walk through the door that smelled like sawdust and mineral spirits, his brother's arm around his shoulder, his father's laugh audible even through the veil, and the version of him that had been standing beside the bed for 3 days finally resting. Raphael was gone by the time I got back to the hallway, but he'd left 3 things I could verify later, when my brain was willing to process verification. First, a business card on the bench, plain white, no logo, just a phone number. I called it the next week. A hospice nurse answered. "We don't give out cards," she said, confused, "but if someone left you that number, call it when you need us. We'll come." I still have the card. Second, the coffee cup I'd left on the bench was full again. Hot, tasting better than any vending machine has a right to taste. I drank it because when celestial beings refill your coffee, you don't question the logistics. Third, my father's watch, the one he'd been wearing when they admitted him. The one the nurse had put in a plastic bag labeled "patient belongings." It had stopped at 4:32 a.m. Not because the battery died. I had it checked. The jeweler said the mechanism was fine. It just decided to stop. Sometimes watches do that, he said, when the person who wore them lets go. I didn't tell him a light being had explained thresholds to me while my father chose between enduring and crossing. I just said thank you and kept the watch in my desk drawer where I keep things that matter. I use the 3 sentences now when friends call from ICU hallways, when my sister texts me from her mother-in-law's hospice room, when the guy at the fabrication shop tells me his dad's on a ventilator and the doctors are using phrases like multiple organ failure. I don't tell them about Raphael unless they ask why I'm so sure. Mostly I just say, 3 sentences. Thank you for staying as long as you did. I'll take care of what you're worried about. You can go. Say them out loud. Grammar matters. Let love be stronger than holding on. Some of them use the sentences, some don't. The ones who do call me back weeks later and say the same thing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and he looked peaceful after. That's the only math that matters. If you're sitting in an ICU hallway right now, if you're waiting for the doctor with the careful voice, if you're holding coffee that tastes like the machine has opinions, here's what I need you to know. Your person is probably already standing beside their bed, attending from a wider seat, negotiating with love instead of capacity. They're holding on because they think you need them to. You can release them with 3 sentences that don't require faith, just honesty. Thank you for staying as long as you did. I'll take care of what you're worried about. You can go. Say them out loud. Mean them. Trust that love is strong enough to do the thing that looks like the opposite of love, but is actually the most love you've ever done. And if a light being sits beside you on the bench and tells you your person is choosing, don't question whether you're hallucinating from exhaustion and grief. Listen, take notes, let the translation happen. Because thresholds have guides and guides have instructions, and instructions are the kindest grammar anyone ever invented, for the moment when holding on stops being love and starts being cruelty. If this helped you breathe in a hallway that steals breath, subscribe. If you've said the 3 sentences and watched someone cross with relief instead of resistance, drop 432 in the comments so others know the time matters. And if you're not in the hallway yet, but you know you will be someday, save this, print it. Put it in your wallet next to the insurance card. Because thresholds don't announce themselves with sirens. They arrive at 4:18 a.m. in a hallway that smells like hope went through a sterilizer. And the only thing that gets you through is knowing what to say when love asks you to let go.